Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Josh McCall, the Chairman and CEO of Jack Morton. As we all wind down the third quarter of 2020, a year we all will clearly never forget, many of you are deeply into planning for the year ahead. But how do we do that when we're living in the midst of these continued uncertain times? How do we plan for the unexpected? Today, a talented group of speakers across Jack's disciplines will walk you through what you need to know for 2021 so you can confidently plan your brand experiences of the future, whether they are virtual, hybrid, or live. So with that, please join me in welcoming our presenters. Craig Milan, our Chief Client Officer, Lorraine Terry, Group Strategy Director, Sharon Crichton, Executive Vice President and Global Head of Production, and Scott Varlin, Senior Vice President and Head of JackX, our innovation practice in North America. As questions come to mind through the presentation, enter them in the Q&A button. Over to you, Craig.
Thank you, Josh. Today we're talking about planning experiences in 2021. Obviously, it's been a wild year as we've seen big shifts across our industries and across most industries. While many of us might have been caught on our back foot initially, we've augmented, we've changed, and we've learned a lot in 2020. And those learnings will help us expect the unexpected, hopefully, in 2021. Early in the pandemic, our client, Julie Hogan, said this: experiential as we knew it is no longer. And Julie was correct. While this slide looks very painful, what we all know now is the change is not temporary. We have huge advantages knowing this today. And so let's think about where we are today and where consumers are today with all this uncertainty. The majority of Americans remain reluctant to reopen and engage in in-person activities, with large indoor events being seen as higher risk. Almost 75% of people would not feel comfortable attending an indoor event with thousands of people if it were held today. So while there's lots of things driving this uncertainty, and obviously there's geographical bias to the uncertainty, let's dig into what's really driving this uncertainty. 52.1% are going to be more comfortable when a vaccine becomes widely available. 41% when the rate of deaths and infections decreases. 26.3%, everyone wearing masks or gloves. And obviously 24.6% around forced social distancing. And we believe there's an intrinsic connection between social closeness, which is the opposite of social distancing, and large experiences. Customers and consumers are looking for guidance from health professionals, adoption of safety procedures, and a downward trend in new virus cases, and ultimately the arrival of this vaccine. But with vaccines being so important to making people comfortable with social closeness, what's the timing? Well, I think many people know this. Vaccine dates have been moving quite a bit, with a vaccine release dates continuing to move from Q4 of this year to Q1 of next year to some new news saying Q3 of next year. This key accelerant to social closeness is completely unreliable in our forecasting. So as we look at an estimated vaccine release date around Q1 of next year and approval, and then deployment coming from Q1 towards Q3, that's when we'll see increased public confidence in social closeness and obviously a connection to live experiences coming back. And that actually teaches us and makes us know one really important thing, is that virtual and hybrid experiences are going to be mandatory for 2021. There could be some incidents where that as geographic incidence biases take place, where we'll see an accelerant there, but we really see virtual and hybrid mandatory. And as the workplace becomes more flexible and technology continues to develop, people have become way more flexible about using technology as a form of a live experience. But this doesn't mean they expect online experiences to be inferior to offline experiences. In fact, they now expect online experiences to be better than offline experiences. So how do we plan for them in 2021? You know, we know this, right? Many of our clients on the phone, many of our prospects on the phone, they have to grow again and they want to grow again. And objectives are going to be the key to driving that growth. So we need a new planning model, a model that allows for flexibility, customization, and agility, and one we can turn on a dime when planning live experiences. And for us at Jack, that model is made up of two core principles: fixed and flexible. Let's take a deeper look at this model. So fixed on the left-hand side is all the business objectives. You know, your key objectives of what you're trying to achieve as a business, your key audience you're trying to reach, and the KPIs to show your success rate of reaching that audience. And from a Jack perspective, we're always looking strategically to help you with alignment and education, because live experiences need a very different form of education than hybrid and virtual experiences. Variables are all what 2020 has taught everyone on this phone. There are variables to health, like COVID-19. There are cultural barriers barriers by market and by geography. And then there are geographic barriers, which sometimes can even include weather-related barriers and environmental-related barriers. And that is an analysis and impact assessment that the agency needs to do to understand what are the most flexible solutions we can plan. And this is where flexible really comes into play, right? Experience design. So how can we plan to build experiences in 2021 that are has a primary experience and then potentially a secondary experience, where we're building in contingencies based on all the variables I mentioned earlier? This total process is really important for us because this arms our clients in planning experiences that won't just cancel, but might augment over time. As we move forward, I can explain really what fuels this model. And fueling the model is really important because there are three key things that are going to fuel this model for 2021 that are very important for us to understand and learn about. One is audiences. So how are audiences adapting to their new work from home, live from work environments? The second is formats. What are the ways to engage these audience and get true engagement in working within their current environments? And the formats vary obviously inside of hybrid and virtual, but there's lots of formats that vary inside of there as well. And the third and most important, and sometimes most important piece today, is how do you amp up that engagement, is innovation. And innovation itself was something we've always talked about as a business, but innovation is quickly accelerating. And we're going to talk about how innovation that you didn't think was even possible is now becoming part of live, virtual, and hybrid experiences. So I'm going to pass to Lorraine Terry, our strategy director from the West Coast, here to talk more about what she's seeing from from audiences and consumer behaviors. Over to you, Lorraine, to talk about audiences.
Thanks, Craig. I am so excited to be here with all of you today, this wonderful group of marketers, because I want to poke at us for a little bit. And we use terms like audience, targets, and demographics, but regardless of all of this language that we use, we should always start from the place where we are all connected, and that is in the fact that we are all human. And today, because of this shared collective experience that we've all gone through, people are being more authentically human with themselves and with others more than ever before. We've all witnessed it. Perhaps we've even participated in a digital space. Some of it is pretty tongue-in-cheek, like as in the "I hope this email finds you well" meme. But some of it is really grounding and down to earth. One of those examples is Lauren. She's to the left of your screen. Lauren only had 600 LinkedIn connections. But when she changed her profile to acknowledge her picture that she once had no longer was her reality, she had over 14,000 comments and 400,000 responses. So many that others followed suit. They're showing their new lunch realities in the park. They're showing their new colleagues and coworkers who happens to be their family and their pets. We're going to see this trend of authenticity continue into 2021. And when that happens, consumers are going to expect brands to follow suit. People today are not being overly optimistic. They're not sugarcoating. They're keeping it real. It's in a trend I like to call hopefully challenged. And what does being hopefully challenged mean? In the B2C world, it means customers are adapting to their new normal. They're living within their new and permeable systems, but their lives are still in flux. Do they still want their groceries delivered, or can they cancel their online orders and go back to the store? Is their office reopened? Is their office reclosed? They're adapting and shifting every day. This isn't really that much different either in the B2B world. No matter the industry, the businesses are showing a level of reinvention and evolution that we haven't seen in decades. The people that are driving those businesses are rising to the challenge and hitting the curveballs that the COVID realities are throwing at them, but they're building the plane as they're flying it. So regardless of whether people are at work at home, we're all trying to catch up with the unexpected twists and turns that today brings. We're trying to remain relevant and stay agile. This feeling isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. And since this isn't going anywhere anytime soon, the question becomes, how do we plan for brand experiences within this environment? So we act as marketers and stay true to our customer-centric core, and we put the audience mindset first. And if our consumers are in a hopeful space, so should brands be in the same place as well. Let's take a look at the numbers that Craig introduced earlier. These numbers could be considered troubling if you're planning experiences based on negative outcomes. However, if we choose to reframe the data and choose to interpret the entire picture, we see that 50% of people will feel safe with social closeness with the right protection infrastructure, such as PPE and social distancing in place. We expect these numbers to increase. So as we plan, we have to choose to be purposeful. We've entered the virtual experience economy according to IBTM World. People want and choose to engage with the brands which are adding meaning to their lives. Those are the brands that they're going to remember. And this is particularly relevant now as we see the digital and live experiences emerging more than ever before. Because we're working right now to battle Zoom fatigue. Over 53% of people are feeling burnt out on screens since screen time has increased from 4 to 6 hours a day. And for those of us who are using screens as our primary mode of business communication, it's probably a lot more than 6 on top of that. Yet, I say these numbers and I want to look at the entire landscape, not just at one data point. During this same time, we've seen websites like Facebook.com and Twitch.com, not their mobile apps, but their desktop mobile websites with 20% growth or more since the beginning of this year. So while there's a number of popular memes going around about finding the end of Netflix during COVID, when you read between the lines, what you really see is that people feel like Bill Murray on Groundhog's Day. They're living the same life and way over and over again. So this presents our opportunity. Brands, us, as cultural leaders, have an opportunity to change this paradigm if we so choose to, by crafting deeper engagement. Creating a carbon copy of experiences that we once did in the physical world, in the virtual hybrid space, it just won't cut it. We need to be designing experiences with purposeful intent that leads with the audience mindset and creates memories forever. Starting here is only the start. And while I've talked about experiences from the audience point of view, Sharon is going to walk about how we should think about delivering those extraordinary, engaging, and enthralling experiences.
Thanks, Lorraine. So the way to deliver experiences has certainly been rocked by COVID. We've heard a lot about it. We've all been living it. And the landscape has shifted into virtual, live, and the combination of the two, hybrid. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that next. In the early days of the pandemic, the priority for brands had been to get things done, and the outcomes have been inconsistent. The first thing that happened was the experiences swiftly pivoted, often moving faster than they would have otherwise. They took what was planned to be live and they turned it virtual. Some were good, others were great, and some just fell short of expectations. In April, Facebook took their largest sales and marketing conference virtual in just 3 weeks, turning it into an on-demand TV experience. It was very successful, showing exceptionally high engagement scores. But in other cases, brands had challenges. The quick flip to virtual didn't allow for the planning that we would typically put into an audience journey for this kind of engagement, and at times that showed. Outcomes have been inconsistent, but we do continue to learn. At the beginning, we were seeing a lot of Zoom calls with presenters in their living rooms and their kitchens and their bookshelves set just so. But we also saw some really interesting things. As time went on, many brands embraced formats and they dared to be different. So for example, Fortnite held a live in-game concert with Travis Scott that attracted over 12 million players. Porsche launched its newest Taycan to the press in China with a 60-minute live show packed with content, and it included a virtual race between the vehicle and a cheetah. And even the traditionally live, crowd-roaring political conventions in the US went virtual, trying out many different formats, many of which worked well, and some which didn't work as well. So virtual, though varied in delivery, has been prevalent in all areas. Right now, we are over-indexing at the right side of the scale. But as we move further into 2021, we're going to see more hybrid experiences. So what's the difference? Hybrid experiences utilize the most appropriate mix of live and digital to share content and deliver impact. They give us the reach of digital and the magic of live. And the hybrid experience is a flexible enough solution that it can mitigate the uncertainty of the future, allowing brands to create a longer-term experience strategy for success. And brands are going to need that with the uncertainty in 2021. So given all that, what will the roadmap to 2021 look like? In the near term, experiences will continue to be primarily digital and content driven, with any live elements localized. Brands will want to invest in scenario planning, and activation preparedness will be key. Digital will continue to reign strong through the end of the year, but the shift is already beginning. We're already seeing more in-studio broadcasts as brands up the production value of virtual experiences and opt for more pre-recorded content. People's kitchens and living rooms are giving way to studios and fabricated backdrops. And we're also seeing more brands create in-house custom studios on their campuses. So as we move into Q1 of 2021, we will see more hybrid elements, such as live components with presenters in multiple locations and small groups of leaders presenting together. These will mostly not involve a live audience. However, as we get into 2021, we'll start to see small audiences emerge, and we're already seeing that in some parts of Europe. Nimble, easily deployed hybrid experiences will be developed to respond in step as social closeness and comfort levels rise. These are going to vary by market and by age cohort. And accelerants, such as rapid testing and a vaccine, can impact this. So as a result, brands will need to develop flexible plans. As we move into Q3 and Q4 of 2021, we expect to see more demand for live, but we believe most, if not all, will have some sort of hybrid experience. Perceptions around the need to travel or to be part of a crowd have changed. And though many are ready to return to live as soon as possible, they're dying for it. A large number of brands are forecasting true hybrid experiences moving forward, making space for those who want to be in person and those who are more comfortable joining from their laptops. So the return plan is going to look very different than it did before the pandemic changed the experience landscape. So we've seen and learned a lot over these past 6 or 7 months. And as we move into 2021, there are a few key insights and trends that brands should pay attention to. We've talked about the fact that virtual and hybrid are here to stay. But one key element to making sure that these experiences are impactful is the experience design. It will become more important than ever. Brands must create experiences where they ensure that every participant, regardless of location or environment, has an amazing experience. They'll need to strategically combine polished pre-recorded presentations with live and inherently digital interactive experiences to keep them fresh. Experiences that require live and virtual audiences to work together in real time, as if they were face-to-face, will be more prevalent. We're starting to see some of this now with the NBA and the WWE bringing their fans into the games, but there's lots of opportunity for innovation in this area. And I think it's going to become very, very important as we move forward. Content will rule the virtual and hybrid landscape. How we deliver content, where we deliver content, and in what forms we deliver content will be an important step in building the audience journeys. Audiences take in information in different ways, so content audits and the use of multiple platforms for delivery will ensure engagement. Experiences are becoming more and more like TV productions. We'll see more experiences that look like what people see when they're at home versus what they see when they're at work, including broadcast quality productions that may include things like commercial breaks or brain breaks, with things like cooking demonstrations at lunch or short audience-inspired videos. Third, it's really important to align on the fixed portion of your model before choosing platforms. This isn't always intuitive. We often have brands come to us asking what platform they should use before deciding what the experience journey is. And we often suggest the opposite. Aligning on audience objectives, KPIs, and content will help determine what the best platform for your goals and audience is. There's not a one-size-fits-all anywhere. However, there are real benefits to choosing and using the right platform. Flexibility, access to data, more insights to what drives engagement, and the ability to benchmark are a few of them. So platforms will need to be a core competency of any partner. But platforms can't sit on their own. They're simply the vehicle. The strategic thinking, the creative content development, and the level of execution is what's needed to meet and exceed expectations in this new normal. Once the model has been decided, then choosing the right platform is part of the planning process. For example, today we chose to use Zoom for this webinar, which worked perfectly for our needs, but sometimes, often, brands need an all-in-one integrated package and a higher level of engagement. So that's what prompted us to launch Jack Ethos. In partnership with our sister agency Flipside, this new platform will allow for deeper levels of engagement. But Jack Ethos isn't just a platform. It's a way to build community and bring to life the spirit of a culture. It's a true ethos. At the heart of any virtual experience is the sense of community it creates. This evolving platform, coupled with Jack's strategy, experience design, and execution chops, will help us to meet the virtual experience expectations that we and the brands that we work with will need to exceed. And finally, we do believe that live events in some form will return in 2021. This is an image of the world's first socially distanced concert in the UK, and we're going to see a lot more of this. Live events, carefully produced to ensure that people feel and are safe and are visibly reassured that their safety is a priority, will start to happen. We've been working on playbooks and design principles, including things like biosecurity measures and environmental design principles for social distancing. Stages will be designed with social distance in mind. And in fact, we've already been busy creating socially distanced sets for broadcasters like ESPN. Health screenings, temperature checks, heavy disinfecting of surfaces will be commonplace. We're already seeing this in China and in some other areas where little bits of live are starting to happen. And more touchless experiences using low-touch technologies will enable interactivity without being hands-on. So we'll start to see a lot more things using potentially eye-tracking devices to activate content. Gesture-like hand-tracking technology that when combined with VR, AR, and device interaction can help people feel and manipulate virtual objects without the need for gloves or other wearables. And voice-activated experience elements will become prevalent. So there's a ton of opportunity for innovation. There's a lot, I think we're going to see a huge shift over the next number of months, but we've already seen quite a bit as well. So to tell you more about that, I'm going to pass you over to Scott Varland, our North American lead for Jack X, which is our Jack Morton's innovation practice. So Scott, you take it away.
Thank you, Sharon. One of my favorite prognosticators on brand strategy is a guy named Rohit Bhargava. He says a trend is a window on the accelerating present. I think that's a pretty nice way to think about it. Over the course of 2020, we've seen an even more compressed view of this. The future is coming at us faster than ever. With 300 million people joining Zoom meetings like this one every day, something has changed. Virtual meeting technologies are now part of culture. People are now comfortable or getting comfortable with the new normal. Things which seemed somewhat exotic 6 months ago we're now doing every day. So as we look forward to returning to some pre-COVID norms like in-person experiences, what have we learned that will stick with us? What will shape next-gen experiences? What even is a next-gen experience? More importantly, what is the content that will create engagement? We need to ask the right questions. We think it will be something completely new, a blending or a fusion of what we're doing today with some of the emerging trends from outside of our industry migrating from the avant-garde of experiential immersion, responsiveness, curation, and connection toward the mainstream. Elements of the digital world will become physical, and elements of the physical world will become digital. And that no longer sounds as crazy as it might have just 6 months ago. To try to understand what that might look like, we need to get outside of the box. For uncommon solutions, we need to look in uncommon places. Let's begin with games. Or maybe for a bolder definition, let's call it the metaverse. In the 1992 book, Snow Crash, Neil Stephenson coined the term to describe a virtual reality-based successor to the internet. And if we squint a little, we can see the cultural movement in the gaming community toward this type of shared experience in virtual worlds. Games have seen an outsized share of all internet traffic during the pandemic. It's up over 75% year over year, according to Verizon, more than any other form of media. Partly because gaming offers an escape, but games have also become a way to connect socially. Players have hijacked games to hang out, so much so that developers have responded by adding new features to let them do so. Sharon mentioned the very, very popular game Fortnite. They've added a violence-free mode called Party Royale, which has become one of the most popular places to chill out in the metaverse. Full concerts have been delivered in Fortnite with avatar audiences and avatar performers. Canadian singer The Weeknd delivered a similar concert experience inside of TikTok. Working with the motion capture and graphics startup Wave XR, 200,000 people showed up, crashing the app. Games have even gotten political as candidates seek to go where their audiences are. The Biden-Harris campaign opened an HQ inside of the massively popular Nintendo franchise Animal Crossing. So you check and make sure that you've set out your virtual yard sign. Further out on the fringes of culture, Burning Man went full virtual in 2020. And true to form, the organization turned to the community and to indie developers, creating no less than 8 distinct experiences, including the Sparkleverse, which was built by an Airbnb developer in his spare time. It was a vast experiment in immersion, interactivity, content, and technology, with so much for intrepid marketers like ourselves to unpack and learn. When the tools, technologies, and mechanics of the game world blend with the real world, real world, we call that extending reality, or XR. That may sound like science fiction, but we're using these technologies today in the context of extended reality sets, blending computer graphics with physical sets, transporting viewers anywhere. But this magic isn't limited to high-end studio productions. Consumers have had this capability on their smartphones for years now, and it's about to get a whole lot better. Cause is the street artist otherwise known as Brian Donnelly. After seeing the impressive results of current generation AR, he created a public exhibition of 25 6-foot-tall AR sculptures called Companion Expanded. And it toured the world this past March. To see a view like this, you currently need to look through the tiny screen on your device, but in the very near future, we won't need a phone at all. Our world and our experiences in it will be augmented through wearables, like this artist's rendering of what an AR glasses might look like. Apple's secretive technology development group has its largest team working on AR glasses that incorporate a stunning display, making it almost impossible to distinguish real from unreal. That unveiling is rumored for as early as March of next year. Here's an interesting one. A group called Marshmallow Laser Fest has been experimenting with the idea of mixed realities. In this experience, you're entering the world of bats through an innovative and admittedly strange VR helmet, binaural audio, but in the context of real environments that these animals live in. You might say, you know, Scott, this is weird and interesting, but I really can't see this being more than a niche thing. And I might say this experience garnered global critical acclaim from Sundance. It had 700 news stories published and millions of impressions. Here's something a little closer to home, maybe a little more approachable and very relevant to what we're doing right now. We've been experimenting with avatars in the context of Zoom calls. This company called Spaces lets you deliver your presentation as your digital you to a real audience. And they were just acquired by Apple. But what really makes an experience have impact at scale is personalization. It's one of the superpowers afforded to us by the fusion of technology, data, and user-centered design. The key to engagement online and off. How do we deliver one-to-one personalization at scale at a live, or virtual, or hybrid event? GPT-3 is the latest iteration of OpenAI's text generator, and it's within a hair of being able to produce copy that's indistinguishable from something a human would write. Feed it the proper prompts, and it could write 10,000 attendees, 10,000 personalized invitations for your event. Microsoft has now exclusively licensed GPT-3 for all of their products. So I'm very much looking forward to it drafting email responses and my next webinar talk. Combine AI-based scripts, natural language processing, and computer graphics, and you've got synthetic humans. This is the evolution of the humble chatbot. Imagine being greeted by a person who feels familiar to you, who knows your tastes and preferences, who speaks your language, and is maybe your guide to a conference's agenda. We already have virtual influencers on Instagram. In fact, you can check out little Michaela, who is a synthetic human, and she has 2.7 million followers. So it's not really such a stretch. Another example of personalization in real life is a screen technology called parallel reality display. Most screens show the same thing to everyone. This screen is able to show different content to each person standing in front of it. In this photo, you're looking at 12 mirrors mounted at angles, reflecting back 12 different images from a single display. And finally, behind the big behind the scenes revelation about virtual and digital events will be the data story. In the virtual world, companies have access to exhaustive data about what audiences and their behaviors. We can measure everything right down to the business result. And the C-suite is going to expect the same level of precision as we shift to hybrid formats. So how do we think about data in a hybrid world? How do we understand an attendee's journey as they move fluidly between online and offline experiences? These are all questions we are working to understand today. So that's just a taste of what we're seeing out there. But I think the relief is that we're all in this together, and it's new for everyone. We get to invent the future together, and I think that's pretty exciting. Back to you, Craig.
Thank you, Scott. I want to thank Scott, Sharon, and Lorraine for their content. And then in summary, wanted to kind of summarize both the model we're proposing for planning for brand experiences in 2021, along with some of the insights that the team has brought forward. Obviously, we are proposing a very fixed and flexible model. It's time to make sure that all the business objectives, KPIs, are met by the brand experiences you create. And then we're also taking into consideration all the variable factors that we are going to all go through together in this coming year. to create experiences that not only meet all those objectives, but also flex and move by the variables that are set in front of them. And from an audience perspective, I look at this hopefully but challenge customers and consumers that Lorraine spoke about, and making sure we're addressing that group audience first. It's a human first approach, an audience first approach that we think is very important for the coming year. Also, this idea of making sure we're being purposeful in what we're doing, that the messaging has meaning and the messaging is there and serves a very, very strong purpose. And that the bar of engagement is the lowest bar now. We have to both engage these audiences, but we have to do more than engage. In many instances, we have to enthrall them, engross them, enrich them. And that is the new bar for 2021 in engaging these audiences. And then as Sharon talked about the format side of the equation, experience design now, as you're seeing on the right side of the model, is the most important piece of what we're doing and planning with our clients. It's really figuring out what is the right experience going to be, and then what are the right contingencies against that experience based on the variables, especially when it comes to hybrid, where in many cases you're having multiple audience experiences going on at one time. Content will remain king, as Sharon said, but it's even more important as the hybrid and virtual vehicles are delivering all digital content all the time. But it's now not digital content in a moment in time, but it's digital content in moments over time. And moments over time give us a lot more connection to the audience. That's pre the experience, during the experience, and post the experience, which creates a much more ongoing dialogue with the audience. And then objectives over KPIs, Sharon talked about, which is like, we need to nail objectives, work with our clients, work with you to nail these objectives, make sure we're aligned in them internally against what a hybrid and virtual experiences can deliver. And then obviously think about what the platform will be. Then into innovation, what Scott talked about, which is an exciting portion of, especially when you relate it to Lorraine's insight around having to be engaging and enthralling. Gaming, or as Scott called it, the multiverse, is something that obviously has broader and broader engagement every year. It's an area that all of our marketers are thinking about engaging with those audiences. Well, we need to take some of those well-known gaming pieces and bring them into our hybrid and virtual experiences. Extended reality, or XR, right? To transport audiences anywhere. Well, that's obviously incredibly relevant to how we're designing experiences for 2021, because in many cases, audiences are at their homes. And personalization at scale, obviously, is a huge trend. Scott really highlighted all the great and massive benefits that'll happen. And then last but not least, data. Understanding. And data is something that is such a benefit to a hybrid and virtual experience, because it allows us really to customize and learn from each of the experiences on the fly and really create experience journeys that are really unique and data-driven for our audiences. So in talking about that, I wanted to thank the audience. Thank you everyone for joining us, but we wanted to open it up to Q&A. I see many of you have put some questions in the chat, and we'll go through those now. So first question, is there a way of including networking in virtual events? This is a question we actually receive a lot. And so if multiple people have written this question in, we will answer. We'll definitely get a great answer out there for you. I think, why don't Sharon and Scott, why don't you guys hit this one on the head?
Sure, I'll start. That is a great question, and it's one that everybody's talking about right now. Very, very relevant in a lot of ways. So I'd say a couple things. Networking, whether it's virtual or live, is based on a couple basic principles, no matter what you do: shared experiences, cohorts, and connectors. And the way that we tap into that virtually is changing, and it's expanding. And we're spending a lot of time trying to figure it out, but we've also seen a lot of interesting things already. So shared experiences can come in the form of virtual cocktail parties, of prearranged lunch dates. I mentioned cooking demo during lunch as a way to break up the content earlier. Getting into smaller sessions with like-minded people makes it easier to reach out and to connect. Another phenomenon that's been so interesting to watch, I think, is the chat. It seems to be all about the chat in a lot of these conferences these days. We're seeing almost like a simultaneous experience in the experience that happens in the chat during virtual conferences. And there's functionality that we can put in that allows you to kind of break off and reach out to individuals to take that to a more intimate place. But making it easier to have smaller groups and smaller chats will allow us to be able to network and get to that one-on-one, or one in a couple, a little bit easier. So there are a couple ways to do that. We at Jack, we talk about this idea of experience pods, where you may take a group of people and have it hosted, and they meet before the event takes place, and they talk about some things, and they get to know each other, and then periodically throughout, and potentially even afterwards. So they can get the conversation started, they can get to know some people before moving into the larger event or keynote, and it allows for more personal connection. And to that end, you can do the same thing with keynotes. You can, instead of having thousands of people in a room, you can break it out. You can have, 200 rooms with 10 or 15 people in them watching the same keynote. And what that does is it just gives you a little bit of a smaller group of people to be able to chat with and to get to know. And it allows for some of that, some of that interaction. And I guess the big thing is, what often seems like serendipity, or what seems like serendipity a lot of times, is catalyzed by the people who are putting this together. So a little bit of structure around making sure that those opportunities are there, I think helps. And then one other thing, and Scott, then I'll pass it off to you. Another way to facilitate networking, I think that's been really effective, and we're starting to really incorporate it into a lot of our experiences, is to use the existing social networks, because they work and they're good. So, connecting people and allowing them to then take this relationship into some of these existing social networks has also been effective. But Scott, you probably have far more cooler things to talk about than I just did, so pass to you.
I think you ticked all the boxes. The one thing I'd add in terms of a little bit of a color is that I've seen work to great effect is the idea of like a chat roulette or a brain date, right? And this works especially well in a virtual environment, because just being connected to another individual for 30 seconds on a shared topic of interest is just a really interesting mechanic, right? It's a great way to engineer that serendipity that Sharon's talking about. And the other thing I'll just reinforce is, like, everyone knows how to do networking online, and it's called social media. So don't be afraid to go out and use those tools that are already pre-existing, that people are comfortable with, and bring those into your virtual experience, because that can be very, very effective.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Sharon. Next question. How close are B2B and B2C audience behaviors in digital? That's a great question as well, since obviously hybrid and virtual are a pure digital format. Let's have Lorraine, you want to take that one?
Sure. What we're seeing is that the lines are beginning to be so blurred that the differences aren't there as much as they may have been before. There's still the decision-making pyramid involved with the B2B space. But what we're seeing between the people themselves is that we're all human, and that people are beginning to bring their whole selves to work. Our employee engagement practice at Jack has talked about their whole selves and how people are making the decisions based on who they are, and as well as how they drive business. So we're just seeing a lot more blurring in that perspective, and not as much of a difference as there may have been 10 years ago, heck, maybe even 6 months ago.
Great, thank you, Lorraine. Oh, here's one we've got a couple on. How far in advance should we start planning for experiences in 2021? Well, obviously the model that we're talking through today obviously requires a lot of strategy connection up front. So planning for experiences has to be, needs to be time to plan for experiences, because in theory, we're identifying the key objectives with you, we're getting alignment and education through your organization, and then we're moving to actually put this analysis towards the variables for when the planned experience would be. And then we're doing experience design, which often is encompassing a second experience as a form of contingency. So it's, while hard to answer this question, it really matters how complicated your experience or how many functions of your experience you're going to have. But I would say now is a perfect time to be planning experiences for 2021. Obviously, we're working with clients that have experiences in Q1 of 2021 and as early as Q2 of 2021 as well. So, 6 months to 9 months is, while sounds like a long time, in our COVID time, we realize that things change a lot in that period. But we are recommending more time to plan experiences. And definitely if you're planning an experience for Q1 of 2021, we think we should be on top of that going, as of today. So everyone's a little different. Each experience is a little different. We have hybrid experiences that are very complicated, that are in the second quarter of next year that we're working on right now. But each one is a little different. Our team can work with you on the correct timing. But to follow the model, to get the alignment piece done, to make sure we weight the variables correctly, and then we create and approve the experience design of the multiple experiences we'll create, that takes time. And so we advise people to get on top of it earlier rather than later. Great. Got another question. When will XR and VR become a reality? So that's obviously a question for Scott. Why don't you take that one, Scott?
Well, I try to avoid making predictions, but I'll quote a professor of mine from grad school. So he said that new technologies become socially interesting when they are technologically boring. So my sense of VR and AR, more VR and sort of the extended reality types of engagements, those are still very ahead of the curve. We haven't crossed the chasm. But I mentioned Apple's AR glass development efforts. Facebook is working on them. A bunch of technology companies are working on these similar devices. And, it's kind of as soon as everyone has, or most everyone has, a majority of people have, AR capability built into their glasses that they're wearing every day, that's when it's going to be mainstream. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be building experiences in VR and XR and AR today, because they are attention grabbing. They drive engagement. They create responsiveness within an environment, right? It helps us personalize experiences. So there are a lot of interesting use cases, but it's not probably going to be everywhere until 2 or 3 years out.
Great. Thank you, Scott. We have a CES question. What is your take on CES going virtual, and how are brands tackling this? Sharon, if I can ask you to kick that one off and have people chime in on that, that would be great.
Sure. CES is an interesting one, and we've been working with them and watching them pretty closely, of course, along the way. We have some experiences that would have been live there that are looking to see what they can do virtually. And I think, what happens here will be really interesting to watch because this, this is about innovation. It's about technology. It's about kind of, what's out there for the consumer. And I think that a great opportunity to showcase some of the things that we've been talking about, some of the things that Scott's been talking about, and to stand out and make a splash. I think it will be interesting. I don't know, Scott or Lorraine, if you've got something to add to that.
Yeah, I just again sort of reinforce what you're saying. I think the CES thing is really interesting, and it seems like a lot of brands are sort of going at their own. And there's not a lot of there are not a ton of rails on it. I think much like Burning Man, I realize I just compared CES to Burning Man. It's going to be very experimental and probably very interesting with some successes and some not so successes. So I'm excited to see what everyone comes up with.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good discussion. We've heard that a lot of people are using this as an opportunity to put their own personal and individual brand story forward. And so seeing how CES will integrate those brand stories, or will those brands go out, will be very interesting.
So I think I'm looking at the questions and I'm looking at the time, and I think it is about time to wrap up. I want to thank everyone for attending today, and really appreciate all the time and effort you've took in your busy day to join another meeting. So thank you. At Jack, we are at the forefront of helping clients plan these experiences, align against their objectives, help them manage these very complicated variables so that they can still achieve all their KPIs through hybrid and virtual experiences. So please reach out. We would love to hear from you and love to help you through this process. You can get us at experience@jackmorton.com with any questions, any comments, any follow-ups. Thank you from all of our presenters, Josh, Lorraine, Sharon, and Scott today, and look forward to hearing from you. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.